Pregame.com.
Tuesday night baseball action. We've got Detroit at Boston. Big matchup. Verlander versus Beckett. I'm joined by Bryan Leonard. Bryan, before we jump into this game, I just want to take a second and thank all the members of the forums and everything. And everybody knows I went back to Pittsburgh last week. I had some business back there, and my horse was racing. And unfortunately for me, I ended up in the hospital. And Johnny had me on my deathbed. I'll tell you, I felt like it. If you ever had kidney stones, and I had complications with the kidney stones, not a fun thing. But we're back. I'm alive. I won't say as good as new, but we're ready to rock and roll. So I want to thank everybody. It was really nice, reading the forums and hearing everybody. And you were even nice. You didn't even bust my stones. No pun intended.
Somebody else was doing it for me. It was interesting because everybody was pulling their hair out because they were worried about it. Well, everybody except for Johnny because he doesn't have any hair. But it was nice to know that you were cared for by everybody in the community, and we were all concerned.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And let's get some winners to celebrate
and by the way, another reason why we're so concerned, if something happened to you, we got to do more videos per week. And you got less people to do it, so more work for us.
Oh, okay. Well, you see, everybody's got their reasons.
Honestly, I'm just...
Hey, that's all I can ask for is honesty.
There you go.
We got a good matchup here. We got Detroit that, they were supposed to run away with the division. We've talked about this over and over this year. They're here. They're still knocking on the door. They're hanging right there behind the White Sox. It seems like every time they make that push and it looks like they're ready to jump over the White Sox and start to run away, they stub their toe for a couple games. And then you got Boston go into New York, and you're writing this team off, and then they win a couple games in New York. So which is a team that's going to move forward here?
It's interesting that Detroit makes that big move with the trade with Miami, brings in 2 starters. I don't think they won a game since they brought them in. It just tells you the clubhouse, the way it works in the clubhouse. Maybe they got a little overconfident. Who knows? It's a small sample size. But you got Verlander on the road here. Take a look at Verlander. He's got a 3.21 ERA this year in 14 innings against the Red Sox. His last 9 starts, the Tigers are 7-2 in those starts. Last time out, he pitched very well. I think he got to the 7th inning. Right. I don't know if he ran out of gas or if they figured him out or whatever, so he struggled. So he is coming off of a somewhat poor performance out of Verlander, so I would expect a nice bounce back from him.
Well, it's interesting you brought that out because I wrote that down too because I wanted to make a note of it. He has been lights out. Yeah. Up until that last start. He had been on cruise control, but then, he had a game where he gave up 5 runs, but 4 of them came in that 7th inning like you're talking, and it was back-to-back home runs that did him in. Do you think, in Verlander, this is one of those guys, when you have that kind of like that bulldog guy out on the mound, managers have a tendency sometimes to maybe leave them out there too long because you have more confidence in maybe a 90% Verlander than going to your bullpen and bringing somebody in because this guy goes into the 8th and 9th inning more than most pitchers.
Right.
And I think that as we get into these dog days, and and last week, and I know I was on the East Coast last week, and I used to, one of the things being out here in Vegas, everybody says how hot it is, and they go, oh, but it's a dry heat. And I always wanted to punch them. Well, being back in Pittsburgh for a week with the humidity, I had a little more of appreciation for the dry heat.
You really do, yeah.
And these pitchers, it's got to take a toll on them when they're pitching in that kind of heat like that and the humidity that they don't have, the energy to go as far as they do. And I think the manager's got to be a little more concerned on trying to push the envelope a little bit too far.
Yeah, I think it all depends on who your starter is. In fact, you go back to the first game of the season, they were in the same similar situation. Verlander's in there. They bring in the closer. Who's been a fireman this year in the opposite direction because he's the one starting the fires. And he got a lot of pressure on him, and then this time he keeps him in a little bit longer. What was the team that they played last time out? I can't remember offhand, but I think it was that team from Cleveland. I think they hit those home runs. But anyway, it's probably the last hihighlight we're going to have for the
probably because I think Cleveland preceded the next series to get swept in Minnesota.
Minnesota trades away their best pitcher, and now, well, who knows? It's baseball. This is sports gambling. We all know that one day or another is totally different. But you take a look at Beckett, and we were just discussing before we came on here. We're actually hoping Beckett actually is pitching in this game because as of right now, he's on the trading block. And you take a look at Beckett this year. He's got 8.49 ERA against the Tigers and 11.2 innings of work. He hasn't pitched well against them. In fact, the entire month of July, 6.38 ERA, covering 24 innings. So he's not pitching well right now. He's on the trading block. Interesting quotes coming out of some of these players, like Wandy Rodriguez, when he was pitching in Houston. His pitching coach said, he goes, I can tell the last 2 years, this is what's happened. He's been on the trading block. He can't concentrate. He's not pitching well. Beckett's a veteran pitcher in the same boat. He wants to play in Boston. I'm sure he wants to be in Boston. He's got a chance to win. And that's something on their minds. The Red Sox, out of his last 8 starts, they've lost 7 of those 8 starts. So, it's not going to be many times I'm going to go against the Red Sox as a home underdog. But right now, so many more things are going for Detroit. I know what I'm going to get out of Verlander. I think I know what I'm going to get out of Beckett, and it's probably not going to be a good thing.
Yeah, Beckett. The only way he gets pumped up here is if he's not traded and he wants to prove something and match up against, because it has seemed this year that the times that Beckett has thrown his best games is when you don't expect him to at all. He has remember earlier the golf outing and when he missed the start and then he was and then he comes back and everybody made a big deal about it and then he rolls off probably 3 of his best games in a row after that. But he has struggled at night. And this is the thing, I got to agree with you with Detroit. His ERA at night is over 5. And that's just not Beckett material. That's not what we're accustomed to. I think that, this is a pitcher that still has some quality stuff, but like the rest of us, he's starting to get a little older and he just doesn't bring it every day. And I think part of it's mental with him too, because like we said, when it seems like he has something to prove, he can get it done, but other times you just wonder where his head is. And I can't help but remember the end of that collapse last year in Boston. That's still in my mind with this team and players like him. So it's your pick, sir. Who do you like?
Yeah, I'll take Detroit. And it's interesting talking about Beckett. He's not having a good year this year. 2 years ago, he didn't have a good year. Last year, it came out of nowhere. Something worked for him. He had a great season. But in reality, the last 4 or 5 years, that was by far the best season he has had. So he's more of a name pitcher. And that's something from the betting perspective. A lot of guys will look and they'll say, okay, we got Beckett or we have Dubrant. Well, Dubrant is pitching so much better, and you're probably going to get a similar sort of line because of the name Beckett. So from a gambling perspective, we're getting a little bit of advantage that way.
Do you think more so in any other sport that Vegas is a little slower to adapt to these big name pitchers on the decline where the line goes, just because they just know the public is just locked into names?
Yeah, and it's true. And it's probably more in the NFL because more of the general public bet the NFL than they do baseball. So, a lot of times you'll find a starting quarterback is out in a football game, and we always talk about this, and thank God football's right around the corner. But you get a lot of value by going on that backup quarterback many times, and it's also included in baseball with the starting pitchers, but you don't see as much general money in there from the general public. So.
The public's a little smarter in baseball because if you're playing baseball, you're a little more hardcore than just the average bettor.
Right.
All right, there you have it. That's pick number 1 this week here at pregame.tv. Bryan Leonard says to take Detroit and Verlander. I agree with him. This is Brian's pick. We're going to be back, take a look at a game on Wednesday. It'll be my pick. We're going to look at Tampa at Oakland, the red-hot A's. Who would have thunk it? We're back next.